Hi and welcome. I'm Annette Altmans, founder and CEO of the Men Project, and I'm so glad that you're here with us today. Joining me for this 1 hour webinar is a very special guest whom we have referred to many times over because of the wealth of information that she has on her website. So we're honored to have Dr. Christine Cocchiola with us. Dr. Cocchiola is a clinician and a coach who specializes in the traumatic experiences of adult and child victims of coercive control and narcissistic abuse. She and her team support survivors before escape, after escape, particularly navigating the court, and how to best support children harmed by the coercive controller. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Dr. Cocchiola has 37 plus years as a social worker and college professor supporting victims, survivors, and has supported thousands of clients through her Coercive Control Consulting Institute. In this webinar, Dr. Cocchiola will share pertinent information about becoming the parent that your child needs post-abuse and trauma. So be ready to take notes. You will leave this hour equipped and encouraged with fresh insight and tools to navigate your journey. Hi, and welcome. I'm Annette Altmans, founder and CEO of the Men Project, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you for our webinar with special guest, Dr. Christine Cocchiola, titled Becoming the Parent Your Child Needs Post-Abuse and Trauma. So I'm so glad you're here. And if you were here with us last month, you know that we had Dr. Cocchiola on, and she talked a lot about navigating the court system. But another thing that Dr. Cocchiola focuses on is how to help our children. And so before we get going, I just want to refer you to Dr. Cocchiola's services. If you have specific questions for her that we do not address in this webinar, you can go to her website, www.iknowyourheart.com, or you can go to Coercive Control Consulting. And I think we'll put the link in the chat box for those. I want to just do a couple of little housekeeping things. We are recording this webinar and it will be emailed to you. And you can also, if you missed last month's webinar with Dr. Cocchiola, you can go back and view it on our YouTube channel, or you can find it on our website. So I'll get started. Dr. Cocchiola, it means a lot to our team and our community to have you here with us for this very important topic. We have many protective parents who seek support with parenting after abuse and trauma, several who have been with us for years. So thank you for sharing your time with us today. This is going to be a Q&A style where I'm asking you questions that we most often receive. And Dr. Cocchiola will share as much wisdom and insight as she can during our hour together. So welcome, Dr. Cocchiola.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor to be with you and with your team, and also to be able to help if we can, right?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I want to start with, understanding the impact. How does abuse and trauma fundamentally change a child's needs, from their parent?
Sure, sure. So when you grow up in a home and you feel unsafe, and I want to let's contextualize unsafety, because it doesn't necessarily mean you're afraid you're going to be hit, even though that is horrifying and could happen, or you're going to suffer sexual abuse, even though that is, again, horrifying. It's this feeling that we have in our bodies. There is an understanding by children at a very young age, at a very, very young age. I mean, literally from the moment attachment begins, which is sometimes in utero, sometimes at the time of birth, when you hold that baby in your arms. There's a security there, and the attachment blossoms in that. And what happens to children who are growing up in homes where maybe there was screaming and yelling in utero, or when they were born, they felt something from that protective parent, we'll call, or the victim, we'll say, right? They felt tension. They felt dysregulation, inability to cope with challenging circumstances. And all of that, what we know now from the research, we feel in our bodies. And if the mother's feeling it, or the father, whoever's holding the baby, whoever is the primary protective parent, whoever is engaging the child with that beautiful gift, if they're feeling it, the gift gets kind of broken. It's not the same gift. This attachment that a lot of people don't understand how vital secure attachment is to not only healthy development, but to feeling safe, to feeling like I can be myself anywhere I go, no matter what I do. I don't care how horrible it is. I am always loved without conditions. There may be boundaries in place, right? You talk about adolescents or, children who are disobeying quote unquote family rules, but I know I'm loved just as I am, mistakes and all. Yeah.
Very good. So I would suspect that when a child feels neglected, it disrupts their attachment style as well because they're not
Yes.
being seen and heard.
Yeah. So, again, abuse shows up in a variety of ways. And I think last time we were on the call, we talked about what coercive control is, right? So I think of coercive control as the underpinning of all abuse, all of it. So abuse can be physical, it can be sexual, but it's also these psychological tactics to diminish another person. And sometimes those tactics are alluring in. It can be love bombing. You're the most amazing kid in the world. I love you more than anything. This is what abusers do with adult victims, right? But now imagine being a child. Your brain is not fully developed. I'll just say your dad loves you when you do good in math, but is really angry with you if you don't do well in math and puts you down and shames you. Or maybe just isn't available, isn't even there to give you a hug when you fall, right? So there's a neglectful parenting that is going on. It's neglectful for sure. And I worked in child protective services for quite a while, and neglect is seen as an act of omission. You don't really mean to do it, but obviously, abusive people don't mean to give their children attention. So if they're not giving attention, it feels a little more like abuse because abuse is something that is intentional. That's how we frame it in the legal world. And so I would suggest that many of these parents who are, I call them predatory parents, they don't know how to parent. They don't know how to love. They were never loved in an unconditional way. And that's not to excuse their behavior because there's many people who grow up in abusive homes or we'll even just call it neglectful homes. Maybe they didn't have enough food. Maybe they didn't have lights on all the time. Maybe they were evicted a lot. So all of those circumstances, by the way, some of them just as a result of society and we need to support people who are living in poverty more, of course, but all of those things does not create an abuser, right? An abuser is born a certain way, and then their traits are fortified by unhealthy attachment, by not feeling loved unconditionally, by not being, as Gabor Mate talks about, like not being able to be my authentic self. And so ask everybody on this call, right? Like, were you as a person in that relationship dynamic able to relax and be yourself? Or did you have to perform to ensure the abuser was satisfied? Now, if that happened to you as an adult victim, imagine that happening to a child and how harmful that is to their ability to feel, I'm going to go back to safety, to feel safe, to feel
Emotionally.
secure.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Okay. So, what are the most common ways children express their trauma, and how might parents misinterpret these signals?
Yeah, so what we know from the research is children who, what we used to call it, is witnesses of or exposed to domestic abuse, yelling, screaming, throwing things, hitting, whatever. But what we know is they actually experience it in their body. And we know this from obviously major medical, researchers like Bessel van der Kolk, et cetera. Our body keeps score, right? So a child is growing up in a family system like this. And, you know, there are various, we call them trauma responses, right? So a lot of people in these abusive relationships fawn. They just people please. They do what other people want them to do They don't really hold a line to their own boundaries. A lot of people in these relationships may freeze, and that means often disassociating from something really bad, like actually forgetting. How many times did all of your people on this call forget something bad that happened, right? Like they wanted to
Right.
forget it. The brain does that. It's a coping mechanism to keep safe. Just like fawning is. It's safer for me to just do what you want than for me to put up an argument, right? Then add in that women in particular are groomed from society's expectations to be people pleasers and to be caretakers, and that's what mothers do, right? So that's a whole nother like conversation about how society and cultural norms shape us, right? But so some people freeze. They just decide, I'm not even going to remember that. I don't want to think about it. I have adult children who come back to me with their protective parent. They finally figured out that the other parent was an abuser, and that's why they didn't have a relationship with the other parent, with their protective parent. They actually all of a sudden have these moments of, oh my gosh, maybe my mom isn't crazy, maybe that person was an abuser, and they come back to therapy at 18, 20, 25, 32. I have a 32-year-old man right now with his mother in therapy, and he doesn't remember a lot of the abuse. Because again, what do? We disassociate, right?
What
Another
about the
trauma.
kids that fight? They,
Well, right. So then another trauma response is flight, which is a lot of parents when they have a child who's an A student or they're the best on the soccer team or, National Honor Society, they're like, oh, my kid's fine. They're doing great in school. They're fine. Well, that could be a trauma response because perfectionism, over functioning can be a trauma response, right? And then the last one, which is what you just mentioned, is fight. And so we all do these at various times. Like somebody, goes through a stop sign and almost hits your car. Your first response might be fight, like you're mad, right? Like it makes sense. So these trauma responses aren't necessarily bad. They're bad if they're a pattern. They're bad if they're covering up all of your experiences rather than you realizing what you've experienced. And so the abuser, his trauma, I'll say his trauma response is to fight, is to bully. It's bullying. It's pushing boundaries. It's put downs, diminishing other people. And then some of these kiddos come home and they are identifying with that aggressor and they are role modeling those behaviors and they are projecting them right on to the protective parent, who, by the way, now a trauma victim themselves, is being re-traumatized in some ways by their child, right?
yes,
How?
I hear that a lot.
It's so overwhelming. It's so distressing. But you notice how I said they feel like they're being re-traumatized by the child. It's really important that we use the correct verbiage. We can't say that child's an abuser. We can't say that child's traumatizing me. What we have to understand is that child has been coerced to inflict harm. They have no choice. They are like a soldier, and every weekend or every time they're with the abuser, they are going off. I always say to protective parents, just assume that several times during that visit, if not more, your child was told how dumb you are, or how lazy you are, or how stupid you are, that you caused the divorce, or that you were the cheater. Just assume. And this is one of the strategies. Like we talked before we got on the call about hope. Like imagine if you could predict what your child was going to say to you. And I want everybody listening to stop for a moment. Doesn't your child and the abuser have similar things they accuse you of? Similar things they say? Isn't there a pattern of behavior that occurs? So I call that predict. Just predict that your child has heard X, Y, and Z about you over the weekend and predict what that is. Because it's kind of like a steam engine coming right at you, barreling right down the tracks. And if you can see it coming and you know it's coming and you get off the tracks, you're going to be safer. And you know what? Your kid's going to be safer. Like your child doesn't want to come home and say these things to you. That's why I don't call these children abusers or that they're traumatizing us. I suggest they're traumatized by their abuser. They're being actively abused while they're with that abuser, and they are coming home and they have no choice but to project it onto us. That's their
Okay,
role.
so let me stop you right there. When
Mhm.
you said, it's like a freight train coming at you, and it's so triggering and dysregulating when your child is repeating the abuser, and when the child is passionately repeating what the abuser said and blaming the protective parent. What does the protective parent do from a pragmatic point of view? How do they respond?
Oh,
When you said be ready for it, be prepared for it, what do you
yeah.
want them to be preparing in their
What?
mind to be ready for?
Okay. I call it that there's several things. I'm going to give a couple of strategies here that are very important. First of all, I want everyone to remember the 3 Ps. Before your child comes home or today when you get off the call, I'd like you to write down, I'd like you to predict the things your child's hearing about you. Just predict it. Predict the things they're going to say when they come home. And then what I want you to do is I want you to prepare and practice, probably should be the 4 Ps, prepare and practice a response. I'm going to help you with that response right now. But you can't just have, when you're a trauma victim, nobody can do this. If somebody comes in the door and starts calling you names, you're going to go right to the lower part of your brain. That is the reptilian part of your brain. That's the survival mode. That's the when the person cuts you off on the highway, you might swear part of your brain, right? And when you were a victim, you were living in that dysregulated spot a lot. And sometimes you even behaved out of character. You didn't even like the screaming and yelling you gave back to the abuser because you were so dysregulated. So now, where is your child living a lot of the time? They go to an abuser's house. They know they're not loved unconditionally. They know they have to behave a certain way. They can't authentically be themselves. Attachment is fractured from that person. It's not safe. And then the abuser tells the child that you're not safe, that you don't love them, that you're stupid, that you ruined the family, all of these things. So, what's the abuser trying to do? The abuser is actively trying to maliciously fracture the child's attachment to you. Where is that child living in? Ask everybody on the call. Where are they living? They're in the bottom part of the brain. They are in survival mode. So when you see that kiddo come home, even if they're calm, they're disassociating, like I said, even if they're acting like everything is okay, even if they got an A on their math test, they are still living in a space of survival. And so if we can see that coming and know what they might say to us if they're elevated and they say these horrible things to us, now what I ask you to do is now let's prepare what your response is going to be. Practice it. Like literally, we call this in therapy, like practice it with an empty chair or have a girlfriend or a friend, like go back and forth and pretend that they are the aggressive child, the child who's behaving badly. Remember,
And write it down, I say. It's
of
because you
course,
do dissociate when you're thinking about things like this. Write it down so you can go back and refer to.
100%. You need to write down what they can. I always say, get a bunch of stickies and write down all the things put them all on the wall, all the things the child is hearing about you. Because they're going to come home and repeat those things to you eventually. And if you're on the call and you have younger children and they're not doing this yet and they don't even like going to the abuser's house, they don't want to go, eventually abusers lure, not all, but many abusers are capable of luring in the children and turning them somewhat. And if we're not reigniting and fortifying attachment with our children all of the time, then that abuser is going to be, it's going to be easier. This is exactly why I built my protective parenting program. This is why, because we have to work consistently to do this. Part of that is predicting what the abuser is saying and now preparing your response. And I'm going to help you with that in a moment. And then you're better able to protect. So practice these responses. Get yourself regulated because you're a trauma victim. Get yourself regulated so that you can help your child, right? So what do we say? What do we do? Well, I'm going to go back to something else. Abusers are characterologically disordered because they never felt truly safe and they have a lot of shame. in their life. They don't like themselves. They are extremely protective of all the things that are shameful. This is why when we leave them, escape, when we escape, they go most often literally like retaliate, right? That they lose their minds and they will do absolutely horrific things, including turn the children against us. So that child coming in the door is now they were being weaponized from day one. I always say these abusers know what matters most to us. They weaponize the children from day one, but they get more overt about it and they get more aggressive about it when we attempt to escape. When they know we're done with the relationship, they're going to tighten their grip on our children. That's what they do. The children become a weapon. So imagine that you have a satchel on your back filled with arrows. Your child has a satchel full of arrows on their back. The abuser's behind them, and you're in front of them. The abuser is handing your child these poisonous arrows. And what the abuser wants more than anything is for you to react to those arrows, to not get off the railroad, to let that steam engine come right at you. The abuser hopes you stand there and you try to fight it. That's what the abuser wants you to do. For example, how dare you talk to me that way? You're so disrespectful. I can't believe you would say that to me. You sound just like your father, right? Which are reasonable in our bottom part of our brain reactions because we are so scared right now. It's so frightening. We're a trauma victim. But what we know from the research is that if we actually act like we are okay, our brain will tell us we're safe. That's good. Okay. So let's convince our brain we're safe. When we do that, we don't react to our children, and then our children can regulate more easily. You see, we heal in synergy over and over again every Wednesday when the kids come home or when they're leaving. Every Friday and Saturday after they've spent a weekend with that abusive partner, we are again going back to getting off the tracks. We
Well,
are
tell me what I want to get to the punchline. I want to know what it's so valuable what you're saying. How would you give us
I,
a couple example phrases that you would say?
absolutely. I just want to finish the shame thing because the shame thing is very much tied to how abusers are. So when we react by saying these things to our child, which a normal parent can say, hey, you took the car without permission. How dare you, right? Let's just say you can say that to a child in a typical family system and be angry, and that child is not going to have shame ignited in them. So I want everyone to consider that the abusive parent was groomed out of shame, didn't have healthy, secure attachment. Attachment is very much related to authenticity. Authenticity is related to shame. So that abusive person became that way. And when we are reactive to children who are coercively controlled in the same way any regular parent would be, it makes sense, we are shaming them. And if we shame them, we are igniting in them exactly what the abuser wants. If we ignite shame in that child's more readily controlled. If we ignite shame in that child is betrayed by us. We're now a shamer of them. So their shame sensitivity is extremely high and extremely vulnerable. And we have to refrain from that, which is why I have this acronym. It's called, I could put it in the chat. I call it VEST 2DK. If you could remember this, it's very important. We become therapists in the home. We can respond to their accusations with validation, empathic, in a soft tone. That's VEST. 2 times that I'm going to explain, and then we disengage kindly. So what do these kiddos do? Believe me, I've lived this. A child comes home and says, well, you took all the family money. And they say it. And they're always saying it, and it triggers you. You go, guess what? They're in the reptilian part of their brain, and you're in the reptilian part of your brain. You tell yourself, you've practiced it now. They're coming home, and you knew they were going to say that to you. That was one of the 10 things you thought they might say to you. Come up with your response. Say, I'm sorry you heard that. It's not true. They say it again because these kids don't stop. It's just like the abuser. They like to get you engaged in word salad, get the argument like really like very confusing and overwhelming. They're trying to do the abuser's work. They're working for the abuser. They don't know they're working for the abuser, but they are. That's exactly how he's coerced them to behave. Go tell your mother she took all our family money. Or, I'm so sad your mom took all the family money. So now the abuser's the victim and the child has to stick up for them. And so, from a psychological perspective, ask yourself every time you engaged in argument with that abuser, did it work or did they get more power over you? They got more power over you. With our children, we cannot allow them to have power over us. So when they attack us and we react and we shame them, maybe, how dare you treat me that way? We actually are emboldening the abuser. It's the arrows in the back. We are literally letting the abuser hand them the arrow and stick it to us. What happens when you have
Plus, we're harming the child. We're
100%,
traumatizing the child significantly by saying, I
100%?
I feel horrible. So many times I've said, you are so disrespectful.
It's a big
And
one.
that is the wrong thing to say.
It is because he hopes that you're reactive, that you do that. And does that, now this leads to this, right? And like, does that lead to attachment or does that lead to disconnection when you do that?
Disconnection for sure.
Right. And so I'm going to go to the brain for a second. I know we're kind of weaving in and out of this. It's all very important. So the brain, if I'm in a dysregulated state, how do I regulate? Guess what? Attachment. I regulate when I feel safe with you. And so you don't want me to scream and yell at you. Well, if you're telling me I'm a horrible person or that I've behaved badly and you're shaming me, even though I have behaved pretty badly, but I didn't, it's somebody handing me a poisonous arrow. It's somebody handing me a poisonous arrow. So now what we need to do as protective parents is have that armor up where the arrow comes at us, it's going to come and it drops to the ground. And so we validate with empathy. Sometimes saying I'm sorry can trigger a kiddo. You got to figure out what your kiddo's triggers are. But validate with empathy in a soft tone. These kids are extremely sensitive to elevated tones. They're very sensitive to our affect. Be gentle, be soft, but don't be weak. This is not your time to say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. No, no, no. This is your time to say personal power, shoulders back, literally. Hey, I'm sorry. That's actually not true. I didn't do that. You don't say, you're lying. Your dad told you that. No, 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 no. Stay in I statements. That keeps your credibility. Stay in I statements. I wish you didn't hear that. It's too bad that that was told to you. Depending on the child's age, there's a variety of responses, and this is why I'm suggesting you predict, you prepare and practice, and then you're better able to protect. Now, why only twice? Why does Christine have this acronym VEST 2DK? I wish I could think of a better one, but I can't. Only twice, because think about the abuser. What did the abuser do every time you were having an argument? They lured you in. They kept luring you in, and you kept trying to explain yourself. Like you would justify. We know that acronym JADE, right? Don't justify, don't argue, don't defend, don't explain. And they'd tell you, no, you did put the cleaner on the counter, and you'd say, but I didn't. But I didn't. I don't. We would feel like we were crazy, right? We would like lose like when we do that with the child, we are emboldening the abuser. Remember, the child is actually a weapon, again, this poisonous arrow of the abuser. Do you want to give that abuser more power for you? So
Mm-mm.
sometimes this means, by the way, walking away from things that we would normally not walk away from. Because if you're going to get into battle with a child who has a poisonous arrow, and when you get into that battle, you're going to lose. You've been totally disempowered. What your child needs more from you than anything else, of course, secure attachment, of course, feeling safe, but knowing you're not broken, that you can handle it. That abuser sending, think about, I hate to use this example, but Hitler with young children as his soldiers lining up. Think about a cult. How do we groom people into a cult? And then they believe it. So, why DK? Because after twice, you've done enough. you come up with one statement, one sentence, you say it twice so I can role play with you if you want, right? So how about um, you tell me that I stole all the family's money and I'm going to role play with you. And you say it to me, you come back at me 3 times, okay? But I'm going to role play with you. Do you want to say that to me? Go ahead. Say to me, Mom, you stole all the family money.
Mom, you stole all the family money.
Sweetheart, that's not true. I'm sorry that you heard that. It's not true. Say it again and be angry.
I don't believe you. You stole all the family money.
Sweetheart, Mom tells the truth and I didn't. One more time. Go ahead, say it one more
That's
time.
not what Dad says. He says you stole all the family money, and I believe him.
Again, I'm sorry, sweetheart, but I'm done having this conversation now. I'm going to go out for a run or I'm going to go take a shower or, wait, Aunt Teresa's calling me. I got to go. You disengage kindly. Disengage kindly. If you disengage angrily, you've just lost. And by the way, I know that people here are going to be saying to me, yeah, when I disengage, even if I try to do it nice, they follow me. They follow me to the bathroom. They knock on the door. They go up. I believe me, I've been there. So they're going to say, oh, the big one that my ex used to say is every time I went for a run, because he hated that I liked running. So, and I would do it with friends sometimes so that there was a lot of envy, right? Because he was trying to isolate me, right? So even if I was going for a run alone, but if we had an argument, one of the things I would do was either go out and mow the lawn or go out for a run. I loved mowing the lawn. I'd go out and go for a run. And every damn time he'd say, "Look at you go. You're just so angry you have to run away." Well, don't you know what did my children start to say to me if I disengaged kindly? They'd say the same exact thing. I mean, it was like a recording, right? Never mind the things they were accusing me of, in particular my daughter, that wasn't even true, right? And I would just, so then that's when you just keep going. You don't stop. You just keep going. Now could you, if they're nice and you want to say, hey, do you want to join me? That's one thing. One of the things we can follow up with is, hey, if you want to talk about this after dinner, we can talk about it after dinner and then follow up after dinner if they're calm. But like the whole point, you came back with a really good third one where I really wanted to answer you and say, Dad says that he tells the truth or whatever. And I wanted to be like, oh no, I wanted to engage. But if I engage with you, I've just emboldened your position. And that's emboldened the abuser. If the
Right.
abuser can control the child enough that the child is now controlling the adult victim, then the abuser has now total control over that child. We can't allow that. So now, part of our conversation was how do we give hope or how do we help protect? Like, I want you to know that you will heal your brain. You will heal your brain if you do this. If you do this little thing, and it's a big thing, but if you do this thing, you will heal your brain because your brain thinks you're unsafe every time your child comes home and says that to you.
Okay, so I understand that it's very triggering. Yes, you feel unsafe. You feel like you have a little abuser, but a teenage abuser is actually, and if it's a male, it can, it's foreboding. Like it's hard to know, it's hard to feel safe yourself in those situations. So later on, if you do have, if they are pounding on your bathroom door and, you have to pick up the conversation after dinner, what does that conversation look like?
Well, I mean, it first of all asks them permission. It's about agency. These kids have no agency. The abuser it's a liberty crime, right? Coercive control is a liberty crime. The abuser has taken away their freedom, their ability to know who they are, just like the abuser took away your ability to know who you are. We have to, say, hey, did you still want to have that conversation? It's after dinner. And if they say no, or they don't answer you, then you're not having it. And that's the other, these are the kids that you don't keep bringing up their bad behavior. You just let it go. The less attention you give to this bad behavior, the less shame they carry. The less shame they carry, the more the less they'll align with the abuser. But I want to just focus on what you said about this large 6-foot kid who's coming at you. Listen, safety is always first. There are some parents that I work with. I specifically I always call it like we have a lifeboat and you might have 3 kids. You might have 2 in the lifeboat. You might have one out to sea. That coercive controller is pulling them out. You can have a lifeline out, but guess who you need to focus on? The two in the boat, because he's going to come after them. I don't mean to be negative, but that abuser, once he's done with that kiddo, whether that kiddo goes to college or, is downstairs in a basement apartment and not leaving and playing video games all day, these abusers oppress in a variety of ways. Once that child is not objectified to the same degree anymore, they're not capable of being objectified because they're not as useful. Abusers objectify people, right? They're going to come after another child. Work on these attachments. These are the ones in your lifeboat that you have to prioritize. That doesn't mean you don't love the child out to sea. But I have had mothers where this older child has created unsafety in the home. That may be a kid that needs to go live with the other parent. We have to be safe. Our family, our younger children need to see the role modeling of boundaries also at what
Yeah.
point. And so, like, it's not like you threaten the police. You don't threaten the police. What you do is you say, the next time an incident like this happens, not you, I'm going to call the police on you. You're in trouble. We may need to call the police because it's unsafe. We can't do that here. We just can't do it here. I love you very much. I want our home to be safe for everyone. For everyone. You hate me. You cause all, sweetheart, that's not true. Do you see twice? Yes, you do. Sweetheart, I already explained. Next time we'll have to call the police. The end. The end. Then the next time call the police if that's what you have to do. We always have to ensure that we are safe, right? And that child, one of the things that people seem to forget, and when I say this, I think it kind of is it's hard to reconcile in our brains. Every time a child who's extremely indoctrinated is coming and behaving in really horrible ways, if they don't come anymore, the abuser isn't going to be as abusive. The abuser's going to let go a little bit. So I do have moms who say, I want to go to repair therapy with my child so we can repair our relationship. And I say this so that your abuser can further weaponize that child on the way to therapy and on the way home. If a child is in the indoctrination phase where they are so aligned with the oppressor, and it doesn't mean they truly believe it. I don't believe any of these kiddos truly believe it. Like I said, I have many young adults who are coming back to therapy. But if that child is truly indoctrinated, is it going to get better if you go to therapy? Or are they going to have to say more bad things about you? And guess what happens when I have to say more bad things about you? Oh, wait, it ignites shame in me. And when it ignites shame in me, the abuser has more control over me. And I actually will begin to have similar traits. This is when we get into trait world of an abusive person. We don't realize it, but every time that we either create shame by our reactions, reasonably so. Again, in a healthy family system, we'd say to a teenager who took the car out of the driveway without permission, "What the heck are you doing? What are you, stupid?" Like I wouldn't suggest anybody says that, but like a normal, healthy family dynamic could handle that. Then the parent would repair and be sorry, and that child would not be shamed. That child would see that their parents made a mistake, right? But in these family systems, these kids have very low shame tolerance. And when I'm shamed, and if I'm going to go to therapy and I actually have to say more bad stuff about my protective parent, and a therapist aligns with me, says, "I know it must be hard. She's crazy. She yells a lot," whatever it is, that child has now been emboldened. And if they have the traits already of an abuser, it's going to be fortified. Sometimes the best thing to do is to let go a little. Sad, but true.
Okay. Guy, it's a lot. A
Mhm.
question that I get a lot, I mean, so often is um, when the protective parent sees that the child has aligned with the abusive parent, they want to sit down and have a conversation where they can show them definitions of what abuse is and try to convince them or educate them and so forth. What do you think about that? What would you say to those parents, those
I would
protect?
say that our time is best spent reigniting fractured attachment that an abuser has intent on doing and fortifying it. If you have younger children, you're like, my kid's fine. They totally get it, or they are not at all aligned with the abusive parent. My kid's fine. I'm telling you, you need to fortify it now. This is intentional work. This isn't typical family systems. This is intentional work. And so that's where your time is best spent, and on patterns. You don't like, we don't sit down and give them like an educational seminar on what abuse is, but we can say, third time dad didn't show up on a Saturday, which by the way is a blessing, right? But third time dad didn't show up on a Saturday for a visit. We don't say, oh, daddy loves you and he just was busy again. I'm sure he'll be here next time. We say, oh, that's gotta hurt. This is the third Saturday. We call out patterns. We also use examples from our life. We may create examples. We may actually look for examples with our boss or a coworker, or um, we may, like a friend when we were in high school, remember a bully on the playground. We can use all kinds of examples to talk about boundaries. First and foremost, agency. Boundaries, creating as many, like sharing with them boundaries. And this means you're not getting in the car going for a ride with your abuser. Like you're like, or you're not sitting next to them at church on Easter Sunday. Like mom's going to sit separately because that's my boundary. This is where my body feels good, you know? And so, I do a lot of work on somatic healing. It's why I wrote the book Every Moment of Every Day, because we have to help our children regulate, right? So what is our bodies telling us? What's intuition? What's gaslighting? These are all really important terms that we can teach them in other examples in our life that will help them make the connection, especially if you're in family court right now. You can't be making these connections. This abuser will use it against you, but you can
Right. You can't
certainly
disparage the other parent.
never disparage the other parent.
But
There's
you
no
can
reason to mention
educate
the other
them.
parent.
You're saying you can educate them by just talking about, relational skills or using another example in your life, as long as you're not disparaging the other parent, and they will be able to put the pieces together.
Right, but I'm gonna go back to so first of all, I call it the CIA. We have to be creative. So remember I said before your kids come home, like maybe put all the stickies on all the things they've
Yeah.
heard about you over the weekend. Now what I want you to do is I want you to be creative and start thinking about, how can I teach them this week about gaslighting? What can I use in my life? Or what's an example that I can share with them? Or what's a movie they can catch me watching about cults? Like if you have older kids and you're watching and you're like, yeah, I'm learning about how people get groomed into relationships that are really harmful. Like, look at Elizabeth Smart. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, right? Like, so what I'm asking you to do is to be creative. Think about how you can have these conversations. And also, by the way, don't miss the opportunities the abuser lays out for you. Because the abuser rolls out a red carpet of examples for you. And you don't have to disparage the abuser, but you could say, yeah, that again, that's too bad. It's the third time, isn't it? Reminding your child, it's been 3 times. Now, when dad doesn't show up the fourth time, you could say, yeah, wow, it's the fourth time. Or when he shows up, you can say something like, oh, wow, I'm glad that this week dad didn't miss. See what I did there? I didn't say anything bad. I'm glad this week dad didn't miss. I'm glad he's here for you, right? And so we can be creative. But here's the most important thing that people forget. And this is about that conversation about how we have to intentionally be reigniting attachment and fortifying it. This is not just going about your life. This is you being a healer of your children. So how do we reignite attachment? Or how do we, intentionally show them these patterns? So we've got to have intention about it. I want you to think about it this weekend. Your child's coming home. Okay, what can I do? Creative. How am I going to be intentional about this? And then be attuned to your child. Because if your child thinks you've made it up, thinks that you're doing this on purpose, or if they're in a bad mood, it's not going to land right. It's not going to land right. So you've got to use the CIA.
Okay. Very helpful. Um, what is a question that you get most often with people that come to your site?
Um, well, I work with moms, mostly moms. I do have some dads, but I work with moms who have young kids and they're trying to prevent them from being indoctrinated. I work with
Mhm.
moms who are trying to figure out custody in a family court system that does not recognize abuse and certainly doesn't recognize covert abuse.
Right.
Yeah, and I help people through that divorce process. Um, but a lot of my work and my primary work is on parenting and how do we parent these children and draw them towards us. I just saw something in the chat that I just was a little bit concerned about. So I wanted to follow up on that if it's okay with you. Is that all
Sure.
right? It
Yeah,
says,
absolutely.
so that sounds like a no-win situation. If trying to repair the relationship with your kids inadvertently creates shame for them by making them say hurtful things about the protective parent, how can that Gordian knot? Can we do anything in these? So it's not a no-win situation. No, it's not. It's actually, I see it happening and working with so many protective parents. And so what we can do is we can respond to them in this, if you use like the VEST 2DK, that really helps. It helps to alleviate the stress levels. It helps to repair your brain. It repairs their brain. This takes methodical work, though. You have to practice it. That's why I said predict, practice, prepare, practice, and protect. You can protect yourself and you can protect your child. Um, and so, the knot that you're referring to takes time. It's when your child has freedom. And so some kiddos realize their freedom at 12. They realize, oh, wait, I know exactly, see, because their attachment to us is so fortified, right? I know who that parent is. I know exactly who they are. And I've been learning about boundaries and having agency, and I can have a voice in this, right? See, we don't teach children to have a voice with their own parents. We teach them to have a voice with a stranger, or at school, we say, stick up for yourself. You want to be on that baseball team. But we don't teach them to have a voice with their parents. And so now we've got a coercive controller or a predatory parent. You got to have a voice with that parent. So, so I'm so sorry, Sarah, that it sounds like a no-win situation. It's actually, I have so many success stories. It's absolutely beautiful. This 32-year-old man who now recognizes his mother suffered abuse and they're reigniting attachment. And the
That's
reason why the
fantastic.
attachment can happen easily is because she had it all along. It never goes away. It's just the abuser's fracturing it. Yeah.
I try to tell um, people who seem really focused on educating their child when the child seems to be aligned with the abuser to view their role differently and invest their time and energy into just supporting that child. So, going to lunch and not bringing up anything about the other parent, asking them about their interests, their day, really working on making the child feel safe with you. And over time, they'll see how you don't disparage the other parent is disparaging you. So, is that an example of fortifying attachment, or would you like to give us some other examples?
Yeah. So what we know is positive memories heal the brain. They heal the brain. And so if you're going to go out to lunch and you step in a landmine, that's not healing the brain. It's not creating a positive memory. How do you make lunch just lunch?
Yeah.
And ask yourself again, like, if you ask your child about their math test while you're at lunch, is that going to make lunch good or bad? Don't ask
Probably
about the math
great.
test. Don't ask about the math test. Talk about the weather. Talk about, I always say it's silly, but, what are they watching on social media? Like, find a reel and share it with them. Have interests that are similar to them. Learn to play video games. I have a mom who's now playing Minecraft with her kids. What can you do to invest in their world as the trauma victims that they are? And this is
Yeah.
the key, right? We have trauma, sure we do, but I'm an adult. When this happened to me, I was an adult. I am not suggesting that it's not a significant trauma, but these little ones have been experiencing this since day one. We may not have known it, but they felt it. They've had this experience. How do we repair their brains? Simple, positive memories, blowing bubbles. What would happen if I have a mom, every time her kids were coming home, on the night that they would come home, they would be really dysregulated. And I mean, to the point where one time we had a one on, I see clients individually and she's like, last night they threw dinner on the table. Like they're like 5 and 6 and they just like, I'm not eating this. And they threw it on the table. They had a temper tantrum, right? And so what we talked about is what could the next time they come home look like? Because if you expect your child who's extremely in this lower part of the brain, dysregulated, and they're not able to sit at the table and have dinner and relax with you and have a nice dinner, maybe you need to change dinner. Like what would happen if they came home and instead of dinner at the kitchen table, there was a picnic blanket on the floor? Or you told them we're going for a picnic for dinner. And or you had waffles for dinner. Like how do we change the experience to change the environment to create healing?
That's so good.
Simple. It's
Um,
really simple, but it's intentional.
yes,
That's
it's
the key.
very intentional. It's changing your mindset. It's putting your needs secondary, which is hard to do when you're in a trigger, but it's so much easier to do what you're saying to do than doing the wrong thing.
Well, first of all, we don't have shame if we do this way, right? So we let go of our
Right.
own shame. But actually, if you know it's healing your brain, then why wouldn't you do it? It's like getting in the car, or people talk about the mask on the airplane. Like, you do need to put a seatbelt on, right? So you're actually, when you are helping your child with their seatbelt, you're actually securing yourself.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's so good. Um, Jill, do we have any questions in the chat? We have a few minutes. I'd love to get to some if we have them. Otherwise, I'll keep going.
Yeah, Dr. Cocchiola addressed the one that I was actually hoping we would get to. So I'm really grateful she saw that. I do think we had another one just come in. What about responding to false accusations with what makes you think that? And I wonder why he would make that up.
Well, I would remove, I wonder why I just, depending on, if these are all, if you have a 15-year-old, it's a different conversation, right? But if you're talking about an 8-year-old who's saying that, and you say, I wonder why he would make that up. I think perhaps a better response with an 8-year-old might be something like, um, Mom, that's not true, right? That's not true. And I'm sorry that you heard that, right? Or um, sometimes people make up stories and we don't know why. We just don't know why, right? And so, versus if you said, I wonder why he would make that up, my worry is an 8-year-old might go back and say, Mom said you made that up. And then he tells the court that you said, Mom said he made that up. Now, any of these things can be used against you, but if you stay in your lane overall, you should be okay. And then I always say, listen, if a judge says, why did you say that to your child? Say, the first thing you say to the judge is, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was a problem. You just immediately, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that was a problem. Now, again, we're never disparaging the abuser, so I don't imagine this is problematic, but we always want to be ready. This is why I'm asking. Listen, it's not just the 3 Ps for your children and their behavior. Predict what the abuser is going to do next. Predict it. What's up next for him? Is he going to go for full custody? Is he going to go for overnights on Saturday? Like, predict it. Know it's coming. Your brain will be much better regulated if you actually, again, see the steam train coming right toward you, right? So, and then prepare yourself. Okay, I think by next year, or I think in the next few months, he's going to want my vacation time. He's going to get in there and take the vacation time before me. How are you going to handle that? What's your best avenue? Always remember, and this is not to suggest we acquiesce to the abuser all the time, but always remember that if you're going to go in for a fight, your child is going to be further weaponized. It's just going to happen. So is it a fight worth fighting that you will win, that gives you more attachment with your child, or is it a fight that's going to pull your child away from you? If it's a 14-year-old who wants to go on his father's yacht this summer, are you going to win that one? Probably
Right.
not. Probably not. Like, even though it's your time, even though it's your time, what happens when you say to your child, That was my time. Really sucks that I don't have it. I'm going to miss you, but I'm guessing you want to go on the app. And so what your child has just figured out is that you understand that they're trapped, that they have to go. And frankly, maybe not even feeling trapped because it's a yacht.
That's all really good and helpful. And Annette, I know Dr. Cocchiola is seeing the chat. I'm not sure if you are, but it's somebody had mentioned that the details are really helpful, and I do think that has really stood out here. I just all the specifics are so helpful. So we really appreciate you going deeper into that, Dr. Cocchiola, and what it could look like, what it could sound like, what's helpful, what's not helpful, and really encouraging people to think about the abuser's next step. I think that's really important too. All of it is just so rich. Yeah, so rich in information. So anyway, I know you're looking at the chat. So do you see something else there you'd like to pick up?
Sure. It says, can you give that response with teenagers too, please? I'm going through parental alienation with my 13 and 15-year-old right now with my children that started after I told my abusive husband of 20 years when he raised me, I cannot do this anymore. I'm separating from you. I'm not sure which response she's looking for, but I wanted to focus on the words parental alienation for a moment. So what I'd love for you to be able to do, and you can call it alienation, believe me, I did too, and it's the perfect word. The abuser likes to accuse us of alienating them from the children, but really what they're doing is doing it to us, right? And so they will go to court and accuse us of doing these things. They get custody when they claim alienation. I would love for you to look through an attachment lens. I'm sorry that you've cried through the entire Zoom, Amy, but what I would say to you is that whatever time, I don't know your question specifically, but whatever time you have with your children, I want you to remember that everything coming out of their mouth against you is not personal. It's a strategy of his to get them to hurt you so that you will react, so that your attachment will be more fractured. He doesn't know he's fracturing attachment. They're not smart enough to figure that out, but that's exactly what they're doing. So I would love for you to just work on attachment. What does that look like? Does that look like at 13 years old, maybe you can get 20 minutes of time getting an ice cream, and it's not going to go well after 20 minutes, you're going to bring them home, but you're not going to be questioning, you're not going to be emotional, you're just going to be, I miss you and I love you, sweetheart, right? What does this look like? Or when they're home, how do you create as much space for them? Because when we're there, it feels like pressure because they get pressure all the time from the abuser. So how do you create, like, do you have to be waiting when they come home? Can you be in the shower? Or here's the other thing that's really helpful. Show them you have a normal life. Mom's going to yoga, and go to yoga. Mom's having a few girlfriends over tonight, and don't drink because the abuser will co-opt that against you, but have a few friends over or have their friends over with their friends' parents. Continue to do all of the things that will bring in the parts of their world that are healthy and good, because abusers indoctrinate by doing two important things. They isolate and they intimidate.
Yeah.
Dr. Cocchiola, can you also address what this looks like with adult children? Because we've had that question in previous webinars when, as the kids get older and become adults, where they then pull away from the protective parent. And if you can speak to that, that would be really helpful.
I think there's a variety of reasons why kids will pull away when they're older. And of course, it can be that they were totally indoctrinated. Let's put that aside. The other reason why they do that is if the victim continues to show up in victim stance. No child's going to come towards you if you're broken. No child, not a 5-year-old, not a 10-year-old, not a 15 or a 25-year-old. Because if you're broken, first of all, you're not going to be able to keep them safe. And second of all, what if they caused the breaking? What if they broke you? They're so filled with shame. You're a reminder to them of what they did when they did all those bad behaviors, whether they did 1, 2, or 10, you're a reminder. So for older children, it's about creating opportunities to have totally benign, I call it benign conversations. Like I have a mom, she has, as soon as she filed, I think the son is like maybe 26. As soon as she filed, he like basically like stopped responding to her texts. but she is able to go out and treat him to dinner. And when she goes to dinner with him and his girlfriend, she pays. He makes it all about him. He never asks how she is. She lost heat in her house this winter. He never responded. He never asks. And I'm like, this is the building. He's still testing to see if you're safe. He's still testing to see if your story is the right story, or are you truly like a victim, or did you victimize dad? He's testing. Continue to show up in that way. Empowered. We have to come from a position of personal power. It has to feel good to our kids. It can't, it's like, we make a terrible mistake. And is it like, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that. No, no, no. It's like, I'm sorry. I'm human. I made a mistake. I apologize. Not I apologize, but I was angry, or I apologize. These false apologies that a lot of victims get into a habit of doing because they've had to apologize so much with the predator. And the predator never gives a real apology. The false apologies don't work. They have to be real. I'm really sorry. I screwed up.
I want to ask one more question, but I don't know if you have a hard stop exactly in 1 minute.
No, I don't.
Okay. So, what I find is that a lot of people who are discovering that they're in a coercive, controlling relationship aren't quite ready to accept that they're victims yet. They're not like, I wouldn't blurt out, you're a victim of abuse. I would show them materials for them to come to that conclusion on their own by informing them, but not confronting them. And so then they come to the place where they're like, wow, I am being victimized. And they really, some, not all by any means, but there are some that grab onto that victim persona and they stay in a victim mode. They have a really hard time breaking out of a victim mode and moving on to surviving and thriving. And some, it's like habitually, like for years, they're in this victim mode where they're helpless and they want their children to come and support them and almost rescue them. And when you mentioned, it made me think of this when you mentioned that if you come from a victim stance, the child is not going to nurture you, or you said something like that. What is it about being a victim, being stuck in a victim stance that would cause the child to not be comforting?
Well, first of all, I think, and I'm not sure you're referencing this, but I'll just say this, it's not up to children to take care of us.
Thank you.
Regardless of what we've experienced, it is not their job.
That's
And if they're
right.
behaving badly, it's not their fault. It's not their fault. We have to stop assuming, we have to stop saying my kid's a bad kid, or they behave badly, or they call me names, or stuff. So I don't want to be rude, but we have to stop feeling sorry for ourselves if we want our child to heal. Okay? We have a right to feel the pain and the trauma of what's happened. And that's why you have this wonderful community, so that people can come together and know they're not alone. Community is fabulous for this, right? But we have to
Absolutely.
radically accept that this is what our life is now. And guess who the number one healer is for your child? You are. I mean, could you imagine any greater gift on the planet than to know that your child was harmed and you get to be their healer? And this is why,
Yeah,
I mean, so many of the people, the questions they're asking in the chat are beautiful and so important. But I'm telling you, people tell me my protective parenting program is a game changer for them, because it is all of this that we're talking about and so much more. The reality is that I want protective parents to be a therapist with their child. So imagine me, a therapist. I'd go see clients in my office at the time, yet I was being actively abused at home. And when I was with my clients, I did a good job with them, right? Because I performed my role. That's what I did. So now I'm suggesting you perform your role. You're a protective mother, but you are actually their therapist. How do you handle these situations as if you're seeing them clinically? And you don't just get 50 minutes a week, by the way, you get maybe 20 hours a week. How much impact could you have on them, right? And so this is like we have so much power and to the point. So it's not their job to take care of us, it's our job to heal them. Listen, we didn't ask for this relationship. There's no shame. These abusers prey upon us, as I talked about in our other webinar. They prey upon us. We didn't ask for this. Your child didn't ask for this. So let's fix it. What if I
Oh,
told
it's
you
so
you could fix it?
critical. It's sorry, I just
Yeah,
can hardly contain myself. It's critical that protective parents learn specifically what it means to help their child heal versus the things that they can say and do that are going to actually exacerbate the child's trauma. That is a responsibility that they each carry. So, what program are you, explain the program that you offer that gets into that?
sure. And there was somebody in the chat who was asking about her 3-year-old when they come home and they're dysregulated. The book, Every Moment of Every Day, gives the children an understanding that what they're feeling is okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be confused. It's okay if you don't want to go visit the other person's house. And then when you come home, it gives protective mothers the skills they need to greet their child when their child comes home. So it actually is a somatic healing book. How do we help regulate our nervous systems? And then again, as I always say, we heal in synergy. And that's really what my protective parenting program is about. I offer it live or self-study. I mean, I've seen other programs online. It's very low cost for lots of support as you navigate parenting children who are being actively coercively controlled. And maybe you're like, well, he's not that bad yet. Or maybe you're like, my child's fine now. That's great. I'm telling you, I see this happen all the time. It changes on a dime,
Yeah.
especially around the tweens and teens. When kids reach about 9 or so, the abuser figures out that if they were really mean and aggressive before, authoritarian in their parenting, they figure out they can lure these kids in with items, with experiences, with freedoms, being on social media all day long, being on their iPad all day long. And then we're parenting children who are not only being actively, coercively controlled, but also addicted to all of these things. So, I just would suggest that attachment is vital. And I hope that people will take advantage of the work that you do to educate on this, and that maybe they would find it helpful to really learn how to become a therapist in their own home, because
Yeah.
that's what we have to be. These kids are traumatized.
All right, Dr. Cocchiola, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your time with us. You've been so helpful and so articulate in explaining some really complex things. So thank you. And thanks everyone for being with us. Take good care of yourselves.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, everyone. Bye.